Being a good neighbour is not always about grand gestures. It could be having a cup of tea with a neighbour that you know is a little bit lonely. It might be doing a bit of shopping for someone who doesn't have friends or relatives to do it for them. You might be feeling a little bit lonely or isolated yourselves. We have a website called Gizmo here at Voluntary Action Rotherham, and it's got lots of information about groups and activities that you can join. You might want to do a little bit of volunteering yourself. We can help you again here at Voluntary Action Rotherham, but on Gizmo there's also lots of information about groups and activities and organisations where you might want to pitch in and do a little bit of volunteering. This film shows lots of people and examples of volunteering, but also being a good neighbour. And the film shows that kindness and caring can really change people's lives.
So during COVID, the volunteers have been absolutely essential to what we've done. We were very lucky and managed to successfully recruit some more to expand the team, because quite quickly we knew that the isolation and loneliness was going to be critical for the patients with long-term conditions. So I would go along and meet the patients, get to know a little bit about them, try and match them with the volunteers in terms of hobbies, interests, so then that would hopefully make the relationship building so much better. The volunteers would do errands that the patients weren't allowed to do because they weren't allowed to leave the homes because of the health conditions really. So things that everyday things like going and collecting their prescriptions. Things did happen and organisations did get on board with delivering them to the house, but in those early days the volunteers were critical in delivering those patients those essential medicines that they so needed. One of my patients said to me once, and it was so lovely, "I just feel like I've not been forgotten." The volunteer knocks at the door, and although they couldn't go in the house for a certain amount of time, the volunteer would do ridiculous things like waving through windows, dropping off bars of chocolate, and that made people feel human again. And people very definitely told us that actually it made them feel not forgotten. And a volunteer given that little bit of time made such a difference to people's quality of life during those long lockdown days.
So we support anybody with any kind of disability or long-term health condition, and we work with people to help them to take steps towards increased independence, whatever level that might be, and mainly do outreach home visits and one-to-one support, and we provide peer support as well.
And it's just see how they're doing, what kind of support they need. And sometimes it's just because they need a friendly chat really, because they're quite lonely and isolated. They have found it really helpful, really useful, because their mental health has improved so much, because they've been having conversations whereas they wouldn't have been normally. Quite often they've just been watching television, but that's got boring, so they just needed somebody to talk to. And you can hear it in the voice when they pick the phone up in the morning and they'll say, "Oh, good morning, hello, I've been waiting for you to ring." And so it's been really helpful for them really, and improved their mental health.
We were on the phone all the time, checking in on them, making sure they were okay. We were providing drop-offs of food and getting prescriptions and things like that, and doing doorstep visits really, so making socially distanced visits, standing chatting to people.
Because people feel so isolated when they're on their own, and it doesn't take much to put a smile on somebody's face, and sometimes that's all they need really, just to start their day, because they know someone's going to stop and say hello to them.
So our volunteers are a mix of all ages really. We have, as quite common with volunteers, we have quite a lot of retired people. We have an absolute amazing mix of skills. So we've got a retired social worker, we've got a retired district nurse, and they come with so much experience from their field, which is transferable into the work of the community really. But then we have people who've worked in factories all their life and go, "I want to give something back to my community." And I think that was something that people thought about during COVID that they'd not particularly thought about before. And those volunteers have stuck with us because they've got that time and capacity to be able to do that. a major mix of skills. Some people have never done any community work before, and I say to them, you know, it's not about knowing it, but it's about having that thought and that kindness, and we will support you with any training that you need. It doesn't have to be anything too in-depth or too scary. It's about being a good person, is being a volunteer, and actually that's all that we ask of people. So if people are interested in volunteering, one of the things I get a lot with inquiries is that people say, I can't commit every week, I can't do this, and what if I want to go on holiday? And we say, it has to work for you and it has to work for the people who you're supporting. So in the first instance, my quick answer to anybody who inquires about volunteering is, it needs to work for you, and we will make it work for you, because then it makes you continue wanting to volunteer, and you've got to get something out of it as well. So we always are very person-centred with our volunteer recruitment in terms of seeing what suits them. Sometimes people have grandchildren, and sometimes those grandchildren might be poorly or off school. The flexibility is critical to maintaining and keeping the volunteers with us, which then creates that consistency for our patients really within the community, and it does work both ways. But volunteering, I think sometimes people think it's a bit scary and such a massive commitment, but it's a two-way process, and actually everybody, through having a conversation, can get something out of it, and it will benefit those lonely people in our community really.
My top tips for being a good neighbour is to knock on the door and say good morning. Is there anything you need? Are you okay today? And just ask.
Being a little bit nosy, I always say to people, and I say that to my volunteers really, sometimes you have to be a little bit positively nosy. And by that I mean, ask the enquiring questions. Sometimes if somebody might touch on something, or something's not quite as it normally seems, you need to just look out for people. And that might be, I don't know, a wheelie bin's not collected, and that's not normal for that person who lives next door. So it's about being a little bit nosy, knocking on and just asking if everything's okay. And having that time, I think, just to stop. Everybody's busy, but just stop. Have a little look around your community and where you live. What's normal for your neighbours? Do they normally nip out to the shops on a daily basis? Have they done that today? And if they haven't, you know, maybe that might be a little bit of a warning sign that something's maybe not quite right, and making sure that checking in with people really.
I think it's always having a ready smile for your neighbour, and just that casual, you know, greeting and how are you, as simple as that. And I think from that, relationships build. So I just think it's having that big, friendly, smiling face to your neighbours that makes the difference.
It's absolutely critical. I think people are really struggling after COVID. People are struggling, and I say struggling in the loosest term of, they don't realise they are, but the isolation and loneliness is creeping in with people who've never suffered with any sort of anxiety or mental health problems. And actually it's about having those conversations before anybody does feel too vulnerable and lonely. Because if everybody has a conversation, has some eye contact, it does make a massive difference to people's physical health really, and getting out and about. It really does change people's lives by having that contact.
If you are interested in volunteering, please visit our website. We've got more than 60 roles that you could have a look at, from gardening to admin, health and social care, befriending. There's something out there for everyone. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you've been inspired to be a good neighbour. A young person once said to me that one person can make 100% difference. Could you be that one person?